to Talking Supply Chain. In each episode, top supply chain industry professionals and the nation's top thought leaders join host Brian Strait and share their unique insights to help supply chain managers stay one step ahead of their competition. This is Talking Supply Chain. Cybersecurity has quietly become one of the most material risks facing supply chains, and yet for many organizations, it still lives on the edge of their supply chain strategy. As AI, automation, and digital collaboration tools become embedded across manufacturing, logistics, and supplier networks, the attack surface is expanding well beyond traditional IT environments. In 2026, the question is no longer if supply chains will be targeted, but where, how, and through whom. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Talking Supply Chain. I'm your host, Brian Strait, and thank you for taking time today to listen to this important conversation. I'm being joined today by Tim Freestone, Chief Strategy Officer at Kiteworks. Tim and his team recently released new research on data security, AI governance, and supply chain risk that paints a somewhat sobering picture of the current environment. But I hope today we're going to find out that things aren't all that bad and there is some good news out there as well. So, Tim, welcome to the podcast. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, hey Brian. Nice to talk to you again. And I just realized something you won't probably believe it, but in high school, when I was a senior, I was voted most likely to appear on the Supply Chain podcast.
Well, I, I don't know that I believe it, but I appreciate the thought
No,
anyway.
I'm glad to be here. This is good.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Obviously, your high school is very forward thinking and really did a good job preparing everybody for where they would be. So,
Yeah.
it's great to know that we were even thought of back in your high school days. So, that is great. Before we get started on this conversation today, maybe high school notwithstanding, maybe you can provide a little background on yourself and Kiteworks for some of our listeners out there who may not be familiar with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tim Freestone, the Chief Strategy Officer here at Kiteworks. I've been with the company about 4.5 years. Which is a good run for the tech space. Seems to be kind of like a 17-month rotating door in a lot of cases. But it's a great company. We have a great mission. It's great leadership, and we're starting to see the fruits of our labor in terms of the impact we're making um, on enterprises in relationship to securing the data layer. A little bit more about Kiteworks. Actually, Kiteworks has been around for 20 years, 20 plus years, but it was formerly Excellion. The CEO, Jonathan Yaron, came in about 8 or 9 years ago, reinvented the vision, focusing on control and visibility of data exchange, particularly sensitive data exchange, and has worked ever since to build out this platform, which is now the name of the company, Kiteworks, which does just that. We go to market under the name Private Data Network, or we deliver to our customers what we call a private data network, which, as the name might indicate, is a platform that networks people and machines together for the purpose of exchanging private data. I like to think we're sort of blazing the trail here as companies start to realize that infrastructure, cloud, those types of security angles, while important, are starting to become or take a backseat a little bit now to the data layer, which was the point of it all anyway. So excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, great. Great to have you. Someday we're going to get into Kiteworks and the name and how that came about, because I'm always fascinated how companies come up with names. Because obviously when you hear Kiteworks, you don't necessarily think cybersecurity,
Now there's no
you know,
kite and no
so
work, no works, but yeah,
but anyway, we'll do that maybe another time.
sure.
Want to want to jump today into the world of cybersecurity risks and AI as part of this as well. So let's kind of set the stage a little bit, and let me ask you, when we look at what the threat landscape is for this year, are you seeing cybersecurity risks? What cybersecurity risks that supply chain organizations are facing today, I should say, have they changed fundamentally compared to like 2 or 3 years ago? Are you seeing a different landscape today?
Yeah, I mean, look, the rate of change now is pretty monthly, it seems. So the quick answer to your question is yes, it's changed significantly. Obviously, one of the major driving forces for that is AI. That's not particular to just the supply chain. Obviously, that's globally, all businesses, all governments. But even within the supply chain, I mean, the fact that companies can build applications at a pace never before seen is really extending the degree to which data is moving across infrastructures via applications, the ability to control all of that data, the visibility crisis. I mean, we recently published a survey that indicated in supply chain or manufacturing specifically, only 36% of organizations have visibility into where their data is being processed, trained, or inferred by external partners. That's obviously a big problem, and especially as you look at how vast the supply chain is now. So it's not just about third parties; it's fourth parties, it's fifth parties, it's sixth parties. Your partner has their own supply chain to provide goods and services to you, and so just tremendous amount of complexity. And then AI throws a risk or a wrench into that with data access and how agents are accessing data across the supply chain. I really do feel for cybersecurity leaders and infrastructure leaders who are looking at how do I tackle all these issues, moving into 2026. It's very difficult.
Yep. We're going to talk quite a bit about how AI is impacting this in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to ask you about your research that you just released. And in that, it kind of suggested that there's a gap between operational reliability and adversarial readiness for organizations. So as I read that, it kind of sounded like, well, organizations are just kind of keeping things going, right, if you will, so to speak, and they're not proactively defending against hostile threats out there in the cyberspace. So can you talk for a minute about why that is? Why are more organizations not proactively attacking proactively defending against attacks?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't necessarily say there isn't proactive defenses. It's just, the quote unquote bad guys have a bit of an upper hand because they don't have to play by any rules, right? Within um, a manufacturer, there's business operations that have to be maintained. So it's not just about, the best defenses, the most proactive defenses. Security teams have to balance that with operations and keeping, it's business first. There's the adage of when it comes to cybersecurity or money wins. It just does. Because companies need to shore up the bottom line, and they have shareholders that they have to be accountable to. So again, it's not to say there's negligence or anything within these companies. They have a balance that the adversaries do not, which
Yeah,
is business and cybersecurity. Now, having said all that, the defensive posture is a little bit, I won't say easier, but when you're resource constrained, which a lot of companies are, and resources from both human resources and budgetary resources, you kind of have to pick and choose where you focus. And, defense is oftentimes the lowest hanging fruit, where offense requires a lot more investment, especially human capital investment. So it's just one of those things where as as companies go through their evolution, how do they best prevent against or be proactive against adversaries that have literally no rules and can move as fast as they want.
yeah. It's like the police working against the robbers, right? In
Yeah,
many ways, the robbers are
ex-
going to do what the robbers are going to do. The police have restrictions they have on, and in this case, the organizations have financial. I mean, there's resource allocation requirements, right? That they need to adhere to, and
correct.
it doesn't do any good to prevent a cyber attack if you can't get a product out the door. I
Yeah,
suppose when
and
all said
also
and done, right? Then you don't have a business. There's no need to protect it.
right, and just and not just about that. So the operations and the productivity of the workforce. I mean, how many times Have you been in a situation where you've cursed the multi-factor authentication because you don't have your phone on you and you really need to get into that application to
Yeah,
do your job? Extrapolate that across the entire infrastructure in a number of different ways, and the security team, it's just always a balance
yeah.
between productivity and security.
Okay. So, a lot of the conversation today, I think we're going to spend talking about AI as part of this. So, I want to get into some AI specific questions on this.
Sure.
And we are seeing AI organizations adopt AI across the board, right? I mean, if they haven't embedded it already, it will be soon in like forecasting and production scheduling and quality inspection and supplier coordination, and basically in every area of business. So, how does AI change the nature of cyber risk that organizations face compared to an organization that's just running a traditional enterprise system without AI?
Yeah, I mean, the access to information in a supply chain is the critical piece, right? The movement of data down the information supply chain so that the bolt fits the net, for a
Mhm.
really layman analogy, is what keeps the supply chain operational. It's less so in non-manufacturing, non-supply chain institutions. It's the fundamental core of operations, obviously, for manufacturing and supply chain oriented companies. So when you start talking about adding AI to the mix, one, it provides, let's just talk about it from a productivity standpoint. It provides access to information needed in the supply chain much faster. And whether that's just from a generative AI position or from a agentic workflow, you're talking about the significantly enhanced movement and efficiency of data and data understanding. So that's good from a productivity standpoint. Obviously, that's bad from a security standpoint if it isn't governed. For instance, a lot of companies will be building out generative AI systems for access to information through through a GUI or through an agentic workflow. A GUI if you're a human, and then providing those to internally for productivity use or externally in the supply chain for productivity use. Well, these AI systems all require access to data, and the way that they get access to data is they embed data into knowledge bases through a process of embeddings. Now, I'm not super technical on this, but I know at least that much to get um, to communicate it at least. And one of the challenges we see is how do you regulate and manage data going from your systems of record into these knowledge bases for these AI tools. If you look at a lot of places where the data lives, not to pick on Microsoft, but let's just do it anyway because it's the first thing that came to mind. OneDrive, for instance, that's a massive repo for unstructured data at most businesses and the supply chain. After years and years of over privileging, under management, that doesn't have as big of an impact if you have to click and navigate a file structure as a user to get to some sort of buried piece of data that maybe you shouldn't have access to. For an agent system or an AI system, that's a question away. It'll find it. And if you're overprivileged to that information, the AI doesn't know that. It's running on your privileges that are set up in OneDrive. And so the exposure of data to internal employees and the exposure of data just through overprivileged and bad privilege access management is a real problem. And then if your third party has connected agent systems to your workflows to improve their efficiency, all of that data overprivileging comes into play. So it's a really, really big challenge where government or organizations are now taking a step back and they're saying, whoa, wait a second. Before we connect any AI to our data, how are we governing the data that the AI has access to? How are we ensuring that the right people and the right machines have the right access? And do we even know what data in our entire system is actually critical or private? Most of the time, the answer to that is even no, which is why you see the explosion of the data security posture management space. Nobody even knew what DSPM was 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago. Now it's everywhere. And it's all being driven by this real realization that the data is much more easily accessed by AI and AI agentic systems, and therefore needs to be controlled and governed much more sophisticatedly.
Yep. And so as when organizations put in AI, I mean, I think this the follow up on that a little bit. I think most organizations are focused on the governance of AI from a reliability standpoint, right? We
Yeah.
want it to make sure it does what we can do, what we want it to do, and it does it well. And they don't necessarily look at it as from a hostility standpoint and what could happen to that data or how others maybe get into that data. So can you kind of talk about something that it kind of is referred to as adversarial AI and what that is, what it is in a supply chain context and why so many people are not aware of this and need to pay attention to it?
Yeah, adversarial AI. It's essentially the bad guys creating AI systems to attack your supply chain, right? Or if you're not in the supply chain, just your infrastructure. So, and one of the biggest challenges here is that the bad guys have access to open weights and open source models for their nefarious deeds.
Mhm.
And those open source and open weight models they're 3 to 6 months behind the foundational models in terms of capabilities. And if you look back 3 to 6 months ago of the capabilities of the foundational models of the US, those were very capable models 3 to 6 months ago. And so the ability to go and get a DeepSeek or a Kimi or a number of the open source or open weight models that are coming out of China as an adversarial group, tailor them to your needs, use them to understand this complete supply chain of a particular manufacturer, have build agents that 24/7 try to penetrate the supply chain, find weaknesses, find vulnerabilities, report back to vulnerabilities, then analyze that vulnerability for how to exploit it, exploit the vulnerability at every point of your supply chain with just compute resources. You don't have to program um, software that attacks your infrastructure. You just ask, a set of agents to do it for you. And again, the foundational models have really good guardrails in place to avoid this, but even they're vulnerable. I think a couple months ago, Anthropic released a report that they found that a nation state actor, I believe it was also a Chinese nation state actor, used their Claude through very sophisticated prompting to get it to do nefarious things and penetrate infrastructures. So, and it's a lot harder when to defend against that when your data is moving through tens, hundreds, even thousands of suppliers in a supply chain. Then if you're focused on your own infrastructure, you have a limited supply chain, and you can focus your resources on your own agentic defenses. But in a supply chain, again, it's very, very, very challenging.
Yeah. So based on that answer, I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that I think I can answer what this next question. How you're going to answer this next question? But let me ask you it anyway,
Yeah,
because
sure.
because your research indicated that there's not a lot of adversarial testing going on in organizations. So my question is, why is that? But I'm going to guess that I know the answer to that. But why is there not a lot of adversarial testing going on?
Well, some of this is a little bit of just assumption from working in the industry for so long. Just resources. People are
Yeah.
behind, don't know where to start. The good thing is there are markets coming up from within cybersecurity to address this. There are a lot of cybersecurity startups that are in the attack surface management space that are
Mhm.
uh, AI native. I mean, really AI native, not sort of the marketing version of AI native where you've been a company for 20 years and you just go to a trade show and put AI native on your booth. Like literally, the cybersecurity software was created by AI. It's run by AI. It's fully agentic. The real challenge now with that is which ones are worth a damn, right? So
Mhm.
it's there's a lot of VC capital pouring into the cybersecurity space around AI native startups. There's new ones every day. You now the challenge for cybersecurity professionals is which one works, which one is selling, snake oil, which is the balance between snake oil and actually works. So there's a lot of testing going on, and that takes time and resources and budget, and
Yep.
um, so all that combined, that's kind of the answer. But I just thread that with some good news. There's a lot of options that are releasing in the market right now to have a defensive and proactive posture against agent swarms.
Yep. So let me just a quick follow up to that, because I know that risk professionals are very conservative by nature,
Yeah,
typically, right? Um, when they go out, I mean, with all these startups you talk about out there, I mean, there's always risk for any company that gets involved with a startup, right? Is it going to be there 3 months from now, 6 months from now? Is the product any good? Is it snake oil, as you said? Is there any advice that you can share on how to approach looking at companies and from a that may not have that long track record? Obviously, Kiteworks, you guys got 20 years of experience, in the space, right? It's a known quantity. So many other companies, you might have a year or two, and they're coming out with this great product, right? Quote unquote great product. So, is
right.
there any advice that you can share for risk professionals as far as how they approach the thought process?
Yeah, just ask Claude or ChatGPT. No, I'm just kidding. There's a couple of spaces. Obviously, they can rely on analysts. They tend to be bipartisan. I have a lot of conversations with Gartner because I'm interested in what's happening in the cybersecurity space and
Mhm.
where's the wheat, where's the chaff, and they're honest about it. They have to be. So one great stop is our analyst firms like Gartner or Forrester. They have your best interest at heart. The other thing is for companies to really lean on their channel partnerships. These are the companies out there that are testing and MSSPs. If you're the small to medium sized business, these companies are not known for just dropping in tech into these trusted relationships with their customers of a vendor, because that trusted relationship is what keeps the light on. So there's generally, especially the larger channel partners and value added resellers, there's thorough testing that goes on before they introduce new products into their portfolios. So I think between relying on what Gartner has their thumb on with industry changes and who your trusted partners are in the channel, that's probably my best advice. I am a representative of a vendor, so I'll say that, and then I'll also say I'll do the best I can when asked what's our capabilities over the next guy, but we're all just a little bit incentivized to say we're better and to say we've got everything locked down. So don't disregard what vendors say, but pair that with reality checks with those two, like I just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. I want to move forward a little bit here, and I know the answer to this question is going to be all of the above, right? But where I mean, supply chains are like they're complex. They're very complex. A lot of different parts of a supply chain. From your perspective, is there any area of a supply chain that maybe is more exposed than another to these threats? Is it internally, inside their own walls? Is it through their suppliers, their logistic partners, I mean, the service providers, as customers? I mean, there's all sorts of these tentacles out there. Is there any one area that's particularly vulnerable to?
Well, you generally have a little bit more control over the people in your organization. I mean, first of all, people's the weakest link.
Mm,
That's the known quantity. It's why phishing and ransomware continues to be the biggest challenge for companies to defend against, because you just simply can't control the brains of people, yet, until Elon Musk figures that out. But you can, to a degree, more than externals. control the environment, control the infrastructure, control the compute resources, control the endpoints internally, control the data sets, control the access to data than you can externally. So while the answer is yeah, you got to consider everything above. Uh, the every layer that your data extends beyond your quote unquote perimeter, which obviously is pretty much gone away at this point, but let's call the perimeter your cloud, your network. The more challenging it is to control, and again, that's why uh, businesses that operate with very complex and extended supply chains are the weakest because just second, third, fourth, fifth layer abstraction from the source with your data, you just lose control over it.
Yeah. And so as that data gets out to others, right, that's when we start getting into that third party risk that we have out there.
Yeah.
In the world of AI risk, is that third party AI risk, is that different from what traditional third party cyber risk is for organizations? Is that changed, or is it basically just the same thing? It's just AI is part of this.
No, I think it's changed because who's stopping them from using your data in their AI systems, right?
Mhm.
Nobody. So, before the access to data was generally locked down to the technical supply chain processes. Now, if it's connected to an internal AI system, or they accidentally put it in the wrong resource file or folder, or whatever, and then everybody in the organization can have access to that information. AI democratizes access to information, and with agents, it democratizes access to software that have access to information. So there's just a massive explosion, and that's why I always get back to, well, really, if you want to really be proactive, you have to put in controls at the data layer. This particular file with these particular attributes can or cannot do this. um, Nobody ever wanted to tackle that because it historically has been such a challenge. It's hard enough doing it with this laptop or this cloud infrastructure, let alone every single individual piece of data. But there's technology now that can do that. Like I said, DSPMs and of course Kiteworks as a secure data exchange platform combined can provide that level of control and visibility down to the individual file asset.
Yeah. So as they think about that and think about, hey, protecting individual files, right, individual pieces of data, is
Mhm.
is that is that the change that supply chain leaders need to make
Yep.
when they think about cyber resilience across their
Yep.
supply chains? Is that the biggest change?
Yep, that's it. And I'll just point out a couple of things around this data layer security. So it's it's more of a mental change because the technology exists, and some of it has existed for a long, long time. Like rights management or digital rights management, DRM, that's 15 years old. Now where you can say through attribute based access controls, this person in this geo can have access to this data or not. That type of granularity has actually been around for quite a while. Just management and deployment of it has gotten a lot easier, and there's been sophistication layers on top of that to allow for even more lockdown control without impeding productivity. um, just for instance, and sorry for just the same shameless pitch here, but I think it's important. With traditional DRM, where you had those attributes and encryption and access controls at the individual file level, it could go into your third party ecosystem, and those controls would be maintained. So it didn't matter how deep it went. But that data went into your third party and ecosystem, into your supply chain. That individual file is now out there. And there's harvest now, decrypt later approaches where adversaries are just, even if it's encrypted and has attribute-based access controls and DRM rights management applied to it, they're just harvesting for the day when they can brute force get into this stuff. So the ultimate, uh, ultimately private data, the stuff like IP protection, that if it got out could destroy your business essentially. There's next gen digital rights management, which the data doesn't even leave your data center. It sends a video stream of an editable interface of that particular file to the users. So it still has attribute-based access controls. The user that sits in Singapore and you've sent it from your AWS instance in the East region, the data never actually left, and the person in Singapore clicks on the quote unquote file, which isn't actually a file, and it opens up an editable streaming interface that has access to that file. So there are ways to get really, really protective of your data through digital rights management. It's just, what is highly sensitive, critically sensitive, just sensitive, and then managing rights to that effectively.
Yeah. So one of the other things that your research kind of suggested was that audit trails and documentations oftentimes was weak in organizations, even organizations that have strong monitoring programs in place for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that gap? I mean, how dangerous is it? Because I think maybe many organizations look at it, hey, we do a really good job of monitoring. We're really good. We've been recognized as this great monitoring organization, and but maybe the documentation process, that paperwork, right, quote unquote paperwork process is not as good. Is that really dangerous if that's the case for an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I might challenge some of the monitoring claims historically. I think a lot of the monitoring is at the risk management level, monitoring for anomalies and alerts and
Hmm.
that type of monitoring versus across an infrastructure versus at the data layer. I'm going to keep coming back to this because um, this is where the biggest weaknesses lie historically. But so, just take for instance, you have a piece of data that you need to share with your supply chain, and you share it over email, and you have a DLP policy, for instance, on the email, and it grabs it and says, okay, this actually can't go to this supplier. It's got restrictions on it. No good. Someone downloads the same file, another person to their laptop, puts it in a thumb drive, uh, FedExes it off, which happens all the time. That DLP protection goes away essentially, and that's just two channels. Now think of all the ways that a particular file and the number of people that can move a particular file across many, many channels in and out of an organization. So monitoring has that is the gap. Like, okay, I'm going to look at in a uniform capacity all of the channels, and I'm going to identify attributes based of a particular file, no matter what channel it moves through. And I'm going to apply controls on that file, no matter who sends it, no matter what channel it moves through. Like that level of monitoring, people have tried to stitch it together with Microsoft Purview, but you have to have an army of consultants to do so, and it costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And but that is what needs to be conquered in supply chain management. It's just complete control over data flows in and
Yep.
out of your organization and monitoring all of those data flows.
Yep. So is that because I read this term forensic readiness. Is that kind of that process? I mean, what does forensic readiness mean? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit what that stands for, but it's kind of the ability of to essentially say, well, what happened?
Okay.
I was talking more about monitoring to make sure nothing bad happens, but
Okay.
forensic readiness is on the sort of other side of that. Well, what happened? Something bad did happen. A regulator comes in, wants to know what, even if something bad doesn't happen, wants to know what happened. Um, but they play together. If you can't monitor all of that within a uniform platform, you can't tell people what happened with any reliability. And regulations, especially any manufacturer supply chain that deals with the federal government, specifically the DoD, has to comply with CMMC 2.0, which is all about controls. And then when the regulator comes and asks about those controls and the data that you exchange with the Department of Defense, they're going to ask what happened. So you have to have that audit readiness and say, I have complete visibility and monitoring real time of all of the CUI data that moved in and out of my organization and into the supply chain. That's just one example. There's many other regulations that have the what happened button that they push when they come in, and that's really what causes a lot of panic at organizations is pulling everybody together to spend 3 months stitching all of the information together across multiple monitoring systems to really communicate what happened.
So that forensic readiness then is in essence being prepared that when the auditor comes in and does a forensic analysis, right? I mean, it's being prepared and ready for that
Yeah, you
in
want to
essence,
have
right?
it as close to the easy button of here's what happened, Mr.
Yeah.
Regulator or Mrs. Regulator, as possible.
So is that a security team issue that needs it, or is that something that needs to because that's an enterprise wide kind of problem? If that is not done, is that a C-suite leadership task?
Yeah, it is. You nailed it. It is a cybersecurity problem, but I mean, it's a problem in the sense that that's who ultimately needs to action the systems in order to um, provide this. But the not being able to push the what happened easy button or even the hard button has real implications on the business in terms of regulatory fines, loss of business. I mean, again, back to the CMMC discussion, you can lose your contract with the Department of Defense. So this is really a leadership and board level discussion. How ready are we for the regulators when they're asked what happened? And I give the regulators a little bit of a hard time here in terms of putting this pressure, but it's also post breach. If
Mhm.
um, not even with a regulator pressure, if you have a breach, you have to be able to tell what happened for brand reputation, for reassurance to customers. There's that side of the story as well, which of course is obviously all leadership responsibility.
Right, right. Yeah. So that's a bigger, a big, that's an enterprise-wide issue that needs to be addressed
Yeah, I
and
mean
kind of
the
from that
days
standpoint. So
look, the days of risk management, cybersecurity being, the guy with the stapler in the corner and a computer is long over. These are very real business operations challenges that the board is heavily investing in,
yeah,
or should be
and,
anyway.
and the guy may still be in the corner with the computer. I don't know if he needs a stapler anymore these days, but
Yeah, exactly.
right. But so as we talk about the cybersecurity AI in part of this, as these things become deeper embedded into organizations and the technologies that you have, um, there is the traditional IT centric security models that we've all had for years, right? Do you see areas where those traditional models start to break down as the AI kind of comes into the fold here?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it right, IT centric. So, what's the information technology that we're locking down? And that started with mainframes.
Mhm.
Um, and again, security is kind of always the trailing dynamic here. It's like, oh, we have a mainframe computer. Geez, we should probably password protect it. You know, and so it's just always been the IT infrastructure innovating, and then IT security going, oh, wait a second, we probably should secure that. But it's always been at the information technology layer, the IT layer. So the cloud, the network, the laptops, then came mobile, the mobile devices, then came IoT and the IoT devices and OT. So it's just T's everywhere. So we just need to now start talk about the D, the data, and uh, AI really pushed that. Look, if OpenAI didn't release ChatGPT and there wasn't this fervor to build models and all of this investment, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about the importance of data centric security, or I'd be talking about it, just nobody'd be listening. AI was really the driver of all of this focus on. Oh yeah, the whole point is the data.
Yeah. Yep. Want to get into final questions in a few minutes we have left here. The first one really centers on the chief supply chain officer or the chief security officer, the IT guy, right? If you don't have any of those people that may be
Yeah.
handling your cybersecurity, what kind of conversations should they be having this year with their leadership teams that maybe they haven't had before, but what should they be talking to them about, and where should their focus be?
Well, I think a lot of it historically has been um, jockeying for position for more people, more headcount, more
Mhm.
resources, and more budget. It's just been there's a big problem. Let's throw money and people at it. Now the change is there's a big problem. Let's throw money and agents at it. you just you cannot get in a proactive or even a defensive posture that's going to be successful when your adversaries have tens of thousands of agents running 24/7 trying to penetrate any part of your supply chain to get access to the data that's flowing through it with people. Obviously, you still need people because the famous saying of AI is middle to middle, not end to end. You have to have people that build the AI agent systems. You have to have people that are in the loop monitoring them. So there's still a large percentage of this equation being human driven, but you just without agents and the budget to build agent systems, I don't see a way. I don't see a win there.
So start having those conversations if
Exactly.
you're not. Yeah. Final question, advice question for supply chain leaders today. So there are some obviously that are listening today and that have gotten to this point and they're sitting there saying, you know what? Tim is right. I need to start thinking about this stuff differently. So what advice do you have for those people out there? What maybe a couple of things that they could do now or that they should prioritize now so that they're not flat-footed over the next 12 months to 2 years, as these risks populate even more and more.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, and this isn't necessarily relegated to just cybersecurity or IT, but it's certainly applicable, is you got to look at your org structure. What are people doing in the age of, what are their responsibilities in the age of AI um, that need to be adjusted to be proactive and or defensive against the adversaries who are using these AI systems? The whole organizational chart of forward thinking companies is under scrutiny right now. And so adjusting responsibilities to meet the demands of the ask to boards for more money and more agentic systems. You can't just drop that on people who are, sort of used to operating in quote unquote the old way.
Yeah.
Like I said, I see this problem in a lot of other parts of organizations. It's not just um, cybersecurity. And so if you're a leader looking down on your cybersecurity organization, and hiring has to change. You have to hire differently for different skill sets than you did 2 or 3 years ago. And I'll put a fine point on this as a leader in both the C-suite, non and cyber space, non and IT space. What are you doing to change how you operate and how you lead organizations in this new era? Your job description has to change. So there's there's just this sort of movement of technology, but along with that movement has to come responsibility changes and how people operate. And I think, from my perspective as the chief strategy officer at Kiteworks, and I know from Jonathan your owns, we look at how we operate as a business. Forget about the fact that we're a cybersecurity company. As a business who has its own internal focus on its own cybersecurity, we're analyzing our own roles and those of our team and how we can be more effective in this new parallel.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tim. We're out of time today. Before we go, if people listening out there want to get in touch with Kiteworks or learn more on these topics, where can you direct them to? What is the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, you got to smash the subscribe button on YouTube. No, I'm just kidding. Kiteworks.com is the easiest. There's buttons all over that thing to get a hold with it. But you can find me personally on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/freestone.
Great. Great. We are out of time. I want to thank my guest today, Tim Freestone from Kiteworks, and of course, all of you who took the time out of your day to listen to us today. We greatly appreciate it. New
Yeah,
episode,
cool.
Yeah, new episodes of Talking Supply Chain are released on Thursdays. You can find them on scmr.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Again, Tim, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Um,
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
until next time, this is Brian Straight. Thank you for listening. Talking Supply Chain is produced by Supply Chain Management Review and Peerless Media. You can find it on scmr.com, supplychain247.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. For more information on this topic or to sign up for our weekly newsletter, a print or a digital subscription to our publication, visit scmr.com. We hope you will join us for our next episode. For Supply Chain Management Review, I'm Brian Straight, and thank you for listening.